Yeah, me too. I haven't been on the sim since maybe May or end of June. It definitely haven't been on in July at all. I had to do a lot of updates when I turned this on. So the connection, I don't think is amazing. You were breaking up a little bit when you just spoke, but can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you loud and
fine. Yeah, and I think you're okay now. I think it's all right now.
Yeah.
So this track and car combo, what was your reasoning for coming here? I like it, by the way. It's quite good fun doing some laps.
I normally do Formula 4. It is much easier than Formula 4 1600.
Yeah.
I still realize. And the track, later I want to ask you this question as well. So about the R Factor 2, the track is, I drove this as one of my local sim racing plays.
Yeah.
So that place have the what is it called, the full motion, 5-dimension motion sensing simulator, and with the airbag that you mentioned to me in one of our previous sessions. So they have different tracks, they do rotation. This was from 2 weeks ago or something when I was there.
Okay.
And I really enjoy the track. I feel like it's very flowy, high speed, or relatively high speed corners. At least that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's why it was fun when I just drove it, because it is so flowing. But difficult because it's flowing and then suddenly you have a really tight section that you have to get right to. So. Okay, cool. And was there any particular aspect of this combination that you wanted to work on, or you thought you were weaker at, or is it just a general see what we've got, do some laps and then see what emerges?
It is in general see what we got. Like from few of our previous sessions, what I try to do between the 1 hour we have here is find out several things that I can later work on myself. Either it is braking, or how to learn the track better, or seems to me very important where my eyes should be, and I want to get some summarize, not about this track or this car, summarize those concepts so that I can apply later on in my own time.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how you position the car here, based on there's a lot of blind corners, or there's certainly a couple of blind corners where it's not until you're already committed that you can really see the angle of the corner. And it's different when you know the track. Okay, you've maybe learned exactly what the angle of the corner is, so it doesn't matter that you can't see it. But I'm still interested to see how you position the car, especially because they're very long. Some of the corners are long, so there's some big differences you could do. You could take the corners in very different ways. A couple of them, you could go in very, very quick and then adjust your speed mid-corner, or you could set the car up early and then drive through on the power and have a better exit. There's a few different ways for some of the corners. There's obviously, ultimately, probably one way which is the best, or the best compromise, but I'm curious to see what you've decided and then why you've decided it, and how we can tell if that's the best way and if there's a better way. But okay.
I don't know if it's good or bad. This is one of the tracks that when I keep driving this, I laps after laps, I feel like I can get better for a long period of time. I realize, I can brake less here, I can brake even less here, I can barely brake in here. I during the time that I'm driving this, I can totally feel the difference. Versus a lot of other track, I have been told, like, hey, here you can just leave it off, lift off. This time I can figure a little bit more by myself.
Okay. Yeah, okay. And I don't know whether you've driven... We're just on the baseline setup here, so we're not on any particularly good setup. It's just standard. So maybe if you could change the setup, we could make slightly different compromises, or maybe some corners which are full throttle today maybe wouldn't be if we remove some wing to be quicker on the straight. But let's just take it as it is with this baseline setup. It's going to be a decent average setup, isn't it? So,
sounds good.
Okay, should we go do some laps? Should we go start off with, say, maybe 5 timed laps and just get a bit of a baseline and then start from there? I've got some data, obviously, already. I've done a few laps and my PC crashed in the middle of one of my laps, so I had to wait like 20 minutes for it to log me out of the session before I could then get back in again. But I managed to do some consistent times in the end, so I think I'm pretty happy with. I don't think I would find a lot of time. Maybe there's 2 or 3 tenths if I perfect it, but I think my data is good.
Sounds good. So I will do a few laps here.
Yep. I've already started recording, so we are recording this session.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Let's do this. I'm going to jump on board.
And also, this is the track. I mean, the same for others as well. I really feel like I guess it's because there's so many corners that are relatively high speed. The time, the tire, whether they're warmed up or not, they make a huge difference.
Yeah. In terms of when I managed to do my fastest laps, I was 8 tenths off on lap 1, 3 tenths off on lap 2, and then I did my fastest lap on lap 3. But some of that's probably lack of experience. You know, I could probably have gotten closer if I had a bit more practice on the early laps. But yeah, I think from lap 2 to 3 onwards, you should have enough temperature. It should be fine. I found this to be one of the hardest corners, this long left-hander.
The guy behind has just done a 121.2.
Obviously, that corner is really hard. We're going to analyse exactly what happened there after this run, but we've already got quite a lot to talk about, which is interesting. Sorry, were you going to say something, Jim?
That corner happens a lot. I feel like either I'm braking too early and then I was too slow, I have to give it gas, or I go off.
We're going to talk about it, so don't worry. I'm taking this all in. And I'm going to do my best to not just tell you stuff. I'm going to try and ask you questions designed to see if you can tell me what I would otherwise tell you. But at the end of the day, I will tell you, even if I can't ask a good enough question.
Yeah. That sounds good.
So let's get 2 more lap times down, and then we'll have a rest. So this lap and then 1 more.
That's good. Yeah, I don't know what I did. Sometime for that corner, I got lucky. And it's much faster than another lap.
Okay. Don't worry, we're going to work on it. Right, 1 more flying lap, and then we'll have a break.
The guy behind has just done a 120.9.
Especially along this long straight after that corner. The exit when I buck it up is it's really impacting.
Yeah.
Alright.
Well done, man. Okay, cool. Good first run. So hop out of the car. The data will load, but we're not going to look at the data straight away. What I want to do is review your best lap there with you. And before I tell you what I think we can change and why I think we can change some things, I'm just going to go through the entire lap, but ask you why you're doing certain things. And we'll try and figure out if you've got good reasons. And if I agree with you about why you're doing a certain thing, and then what we could maybe think about changing for the next one. So I'm looking at your second to last lap here. So this is the one. This was your quickest one. I know it says 21 down here, but you're about to cross the line to start the lap. Okay, so let's just start with turn 1. Can you hear this, by the way, or is this is silent for you, isn't it? Because it's coming.
This is silent for me, but I know what I sort of know what I did, so I can remember.
Yeah, that's fine. Right, okay. So turn 1. Go on.
Go for it. I lift it off a little bit. Go for it.
So you're lifting off a little bit. Why are you lifting off? Now, this isn't a trick question. None of these. I'm not trying to say. I'm not necessarily saying you're doing it wrong. I just want to figure out how you're choosing to lift. So why are you lifting into that? Is it based on past experience where you've tried it flat and you've gone wide, or?
It's exactly the case. I tried it flat, I gone wide, But now thinking about it, I can't remember at that time the tire is warming up or not, so maybe I can go full throttle, maybe. But this one I definitely leave off a little bit. Now fully, just like 20%.
Yeah, and every lap, I could hear you lifting there, so that's fine. I haven't looked at the data yet, but the next question that follows on from that is, and again, none of these are trick questions, and I'm not saying you're doing it wrong. It's just this, it might kind of uncover another answer. So we're having a lift. Are you happy with the line and the trajectory the car takes all the way through here? Like, does that feel like it's pretty much right through there?
Yeah,
outside, inside, outside.
Yes, that's what I think. And I think sometimes I can lift off a little bit less, so I use more curve here. In this time, maybe I lift off a little bit too much more. But I think my intention was actually come to this side of the curve, at least to touch it in some way.
Yeah, which leads me on to my next question. Have you got some margin here? By the time you get to the exit, have you got a bit of extra space that you could use if you needed it when we come to here? We're not like, you'd agree that we're not fully on the limit, and actually we're also, not that I'm asking you to scrub through the corner like understeering right to the edge of a dramatic grassy incident, but even taking that into account, you've got a bit of margin that you can use. So there's potential for more speed there, whether that's by lifting less or not lifting at all or whatever it is. It's probably not the line, it's probably just throttle input. So we'll consider that. Let's just like put a pin in that and look at it in a minute. And we'll see whether it is possible to go through full throttle. Right, next corner.
So you probably can hear it. I lift off again around the top of the hill.
Yep, so you're lifting off. And again, I know I keep saying this, not a trick question. What's your reason for lifting through here?
So I think this one, I went off much more. So this right here, the grass on the right-hand side over there, that area. I get on that grass. There, right in front of us. Yeah, that grass. That part, I get on the grass to the Lucas Oil sign over there on the side of the track. I get there a lot when I try to take that one full throttle.
Yep. Okay.
So I turn. I braked it before this. I think I braked, and then I realized I don't have to brake. So I lift off.
Okay, next question. Have we maximised the track width at all areas of this corner? So obviously, the wider we approach, the closer we get to the apex, and potentially the wider we then exit, all those things combine to give you a potentially higher minimum speed. Have we maximised that? And I'm looking at like this distance here, and then let's have a look when we eventually. So you could kind of call that an apex here. This is where we get closest, isn't it? Here, and then if there's a second apex, I guess there. Have we got potentially scope to find more space and therefore more minimum speed through here, regardless of the lifting amount? And I'm going to agree with you. I don't think this corner's possible full throttle, not with this setup anyway. And I found the same thing. If ever I tried it full throttle, I would always go off.
This one I can definitely be on the light side much more and touch the APAC there, and here they use more on the outside as well. I think what happened is this one is maybe a bit of like a PTSD because that one I wrote so many times.
I agree. I know exactly what you mean.
I don't know what happened to this corner, like right here. If I went off here on the right-hand side, it's never a little bit. It's never like I touch the grass a little bit and can save it. If I'm off, I all the way reach the barrier, basically.
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think the track drops away very significantly there. So right at you can see the gradient change. It kind of vanishes the track. And so I think right at the point where you can see at the point you need to increase the steering angle on this line at least, suddenly the track goes away and you effectively lose a load of load on your front tires. So one way we can probably, I said I wasn't going to tell you how we're going to do this, but it's pretty, since we're talking about it, one way that we can counter that effect a bit would be by already having got some of the angle done before we get to there, where the track tightens, and on this line, we're having to turn the wheel more about now where the track dips. If we've gone slightly wider here and just turned in a bit more, you've got the angle done a little bit later, so you're kind of flatter to the inside there. Only a small tweak in angle will give you quite a bit more minimum speed through here. I'm saying that. I haven't watched whether or not that's what I'm doing, so we'll check in a minute. But let's just, again, bear that in mind. But at the very least, we could say there's probably a bit of entry space, a bit of apex space, and maybe a bit of exit space we could use, although the compromise on the exit here we have to take into account is we have to get back over to the left here in time for the next corner. So we'll have a look at that, whether that's possible. Clearly a lot of people do go wide here because they put a curb there and you can see it's muddy.
Right.
But in this particular car, we'll find out. We'll have a look at some other laps and see whether that's the best way. It might be correct. It might be that going all the way wide here is fine. But certainly the entry and the apex, that's where, to me, it looks like there's a bit of margin. But I agree with you. Really, really hard to carry the speed as the track drops away. So we're going to try and do things to make that have less of an effect. Okay, right, next corner. Here we go, into this next one.
So this one I do brake.
Okay, so I'm hearing it, obviously. So I'm hearing we slow down, we accelerate, we slow down a little bit again, and then we accelerate again. Okay, so we've definitely got kind of like a double slowing there. Let's just go on the outside view. So let's just start with the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Did you use pretty much all the track there? I think we could probably agree that you were most of the way out. It's difficult when you've got such little time to make that transition across, which is what we were just talking about. You arrive at the left just in time to turn. I don't think that's a major problem. I think the key through here is going to be figuring out the best compromise. Okay, right. Here's a question for you then. Do you think the line here, the apex here, is good? Like, is this your desired line through here? Like outside here, apex somewhere about where you get to the apex there? Is that what you're trying to do?
That's what I for this one, I didn't think that much of where is the early or late apex. This is just naturally, I think this is where I hit it, basically.
Yeah.
I don't think that I put too much thought of whether I can do it earlier, because I guess I'm trying to turn with carrying some level of speed as apex, as where I can hit it as fast as possible, basically.
I think I would agree with you. I think you've actually just chosen a good apex. There's a reason there's a red and white curb there, and that's because that's where everyone hits. So I think that element you've done absolutely fine. The bit that might be hard to see, or because you can't hear it through here, is where you have a bit of a second lift here. Do you think you needed it? Were you on the limit through this phase of the corner?
I think I'm trying to remember that lap. It's possible that I feel the car become twitchy. And normally that's like if we go to the cockpit, I can't remember whether I can see later or not. It's possible that I'm jiggling around the wheel. Possible, maybe not.
There's a moment right about, if I go in slow motion, right about here where there's that little bit of understeer. So you turn more and nothing really happens and it goes wide. I think that's probably what prompts you to have that extra lift. There, you kind of breathe off the throttle. So I think we're in agreement. I think your line was decent. I think you had a lift when you felt you needed one because it started to understeer. And there was a bit of a delay before you got back on the gas. I think you drove the car to the outside here. I actually don't think you were forced all the way wide. I think you went here just to be smooth and because it feels like the right line. I'm going to just suggest a thing here. I think if we just apex a tiny bit later, like there instead of here, you won't need that second lift. I think you'll just be similar to that last corner we just went through, where I said if we get it angled slightly differently, you'll be able to kind of drive through the middle bit, right where it tries to understeer. It won't do it as badly. Same thing here. I think we're at the inside slightly too soon, and that means when we get to here, it wants to push wide, and that's causing you to wait. But so it's only going to be it'll be a tiny tweak that has quite a big effect, because as with lots of corners on this track, the place where you gain time is on the next straight. So
Yeah.
a momentary time loss in the corner will give you a long time gain down the next section. Okay, let's look at this next bit.
So this one, I full throttle.
I think it's very similar to me.
This is a tough one.
So this is what I want to ask you about. This is one of the things that stood out to me when you drove. So let's go out a little bit. You're approaching a tightish right-hander. Are you positioned in the best place to enter a tight right-hander? And this wasn't just this lap. This was consistently we'd end up in this part of the track. On the laps where you went a bit wide here as well, it was the same thing. What's your reason for entering the corner here?
In the middle.
Yeah, instead of I mean, this is an obvious question, but where would you want the car to be at this point?
I should have this, but I should open up the corner just like the other two. Even say open more here. I go straight.
Yeah, I want to be left. Yeah, ideally. But that doesn't. I'm not saying that it was possible. Maybe we'll have this conversation and we'll find out you had to be here. But in an ideal world, if we take it out of context and just say we're approaching a tightish right-hander at a high speed, you'd want to be all the way to one side. Like, what legitimate reasons would you have for not being there? I can offer one. One legitimate reason would be that this is just the best compromise. You know, maybe you need to go through that previous corner so fast that there's just not time to get across. So when we're on balance, it's the best place to be, and therefore that's why you're here. Is that why?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. There is definitely enough time for me to pull to the left. I somehow like
you already told me you're full throttle through this corner, so you're full throttle through here. So one thing could be if full throttle means that you have to end up here. What I would be thinking, if that was the case, was, well, maybe I don't need to be full throttle. Maybe I can bleed off the gas to allow me to be all the way left. But I don't think you need to do that in this situation.
I think there's plenty of time for me to pull at least far more to the left. I think what happened to me, like asking myself this question is, somehow I feel like the next corner coming up, due to it is uphill, and another corner right after it, I somehow in my mind thinking about combining them into one corner, and then somehow change.
I think you're on the right track there. 100%, like just on what you said there, combining the next two into one corner. I fully agree. I think that is a very valid thing that we're going to talk about in a minute. So, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So in a way, what I think is like right here. Like right here, in a way, I don't think about this as a corner by itself. I think I want to go straight there. Instead of cutting from the outside, I feel like I want to go straight there, do a V, and then the V will combine with this corner and the next one. And I probably mess it up of how I didn't really articulate that very well in my own mind when I do this. But that's maybe part of the reason I intentionally really didn't go to all the way to the left.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you're if we were figuring this out as someone who'd never driven this track and we were just discussing the potential ways you could take this corner, I would accept that as a very valid thing to consider. But you know, your reasoning there makes sense, but I don't think it's necessarily correct, and I'm going to explain why. So you're right. I think you can get all the way to the left, or at least a bit closer to the left, in plenty of good time. Even at full throttle, I think we've got time. I think you just deliberately, either subconsciously or consciously, deliberately stop turning at this point because you're thinking more about the braking for this next one. And actually, another valid reason would be, well, if you straighten up earlier, then it's easier to brake hard without losing control or locking a wheel. You know, we've got the car straight, so maybe that means we can brake later for this corner. That's also a valid reason. However, again, I think that, although that's valid, I think you can do both. I think you can get to the left and still be straight and brake for the corner. Now, what you're saying about V'ing this corner, I agree with you. 100% correct. You are effectively going to V it, and that, I mean, you're going to go deep here so that you're on the right line for this one. However, the flaw in your in what you've decided upon here, even though you weren't necessarily thinking about it consciously, is that you in this corner you can have more of your cake and eat it. At the moment, you're trying to do it in a way which over compromises this one. And the reason I'm dwelling on this, and we've been talking about this for 5 minutes, is because this whole section is going to set you up for that really, really long straight you were talking about. But you don't have to only focus on that. There is a time gain between where you are now and then the turning point for the tighter part. So first of all, we do want this effectively to be one corner, but it's going to be one corner more effectively if we make this corner more of a straight. Because if the whole thing, if we want it to be one real minimum speed, which is over at the far side where my cursor is for the tight bit, making this into a tighter corner by being narrower, you're kind of almost forcing it to be 2 corners rather than 1. Whereas if we approach it from further to the left, we're straightening this one out. We're going to have to brake less for this one, carry more speed through here, and we move the main brake to the next bit. So we're kind of ironing this corner out a bit. So that's something we're going to consider. We'll look at how I do it and what the data shows in a minute, but we've discussed it now. You've seen it on the video. My thoughts are we're going to try and get all the way to the left. That'll mean less braking required for here. You're still going to V it. You're still going to end up wide. We'll just be able to go quicker through this bit and then still end up wide. And it'll mean your braking for the next one will be straighter. Because on this line, look how tight and horrible this corner is. You're going to have a lot of angle on all the way through here, which means you have to be going slower here already, because otherwise you're going to go off, as we found on the previous 2 laps. Whereas if we've approached this wider, if you're coming across from here, that's way straighter, way less steering angle, therefore you can afford a higher brake pressure and a later brake into the next one. And we'll still achieve the same slow speed into here, but we won't accelerate up to speed. I can kind of hear there, you have a blast of throttle. Because you've actually had to turn it into 2 corners because of that. It's all because of that initial line.
Got it.
So this bit here, okay, we missed the apex slightly, but I can see what you're trying to do. You know, you're trying to get a good exit through here. Okay, next question then. This is really obvious. We've just mentioned it already. What's more important, having the perfect entry speed or perfect line entry speed, apex speed, whatever we decide through here, or how well we come off the corner? Yeah, obviously you want both of them, but if you had to choose one that you did better than the other, it would be the exit, wouldn't it? So you're full throttle now for a really long time.
Yeah, I can see the red bar ever rolling for like seconds in front of my face.
And that's really, really annoying. Okay, so we're going to put more focus on the exit. We're gonna make our time gain here to here, and then be careful here to here, because we don't ever want to risk what we just had here. Like this there, on this track, that is an unforgivable crime against racing lines. So we're going to fix that for next time. That's where the focus will be. Okay, obvious. That's obvious. It means you can get on the power back here somewhere rather than being like, oh shit, now. Okay, right, fine. Next bit. This might not be a thing you've considered now, this next bit, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. So this all looks pretty normal. And again, this is looking pretty normal. You're just on a straight. Right, okay. This is where I'm going to start to ask you a question. In terms of your positioning here, have you driven from here all the way to here, taking the absolute fewest number of meters you possibly could? Like, have you taken the shortest distance? Yeah, obviously, you've not done a terrible job. It's hard to do this badly, but I think since it's such a long straight, since there's so much time full throttle, a very, very small distance tweak is going to gain you significant, distance, literally distance, compared to someone who goes further. Obviously, in a slipstream, if you're following a car in front, there's probably more benefit to going further whilst gaining in the slipstream. But if you're on your own like this on a qualifying lap, I think you might as well take literally the shortest line possible through here. It's still going to be full throttle. There's going to be absolutely no scrub because the track's so wide and the corners are so gentle. So I'm going to say from the moment you get to this exit curb, take what you consider to be the straightest, shortest line. Don't try and open up any of these next corners. All your focus should be on from here is arriving at the turn-in point for the next proper corner, which is the right-hander at the end of this long straight, having covered the least distance imaginable. So hopefully you're going to see me do that when I show you mine.
Yeah.
So this is obviously fine, but there's a tiny bit here, tiny bit, and I'm now looking into the distance at this point, looking to there. Like, I want to drive a dead straight line to that point there. And we're kind of giving a little bit of a gap here. Now, the fact you're going up a hill, you could take that into account. You could say, well, I wanted to be on the hill for the least amount of time. But I think ultimately the distance is a bit more, it weighs more than the hill because it's all a hill up here. And it's not like it flattens off significantly. You could also argue that by being tighter here, you might get to the top slightly earlier. And, you know, we're opening up this very, very easily flat out right-hander here. And again, here, little bit of distance. So I would now be going from here straight to the next turning point, which you're effectively going to do now. Mm-hmm. But it's a tiny thing. We might be talking 1 or 2 hundredths of a second, but that could be something on the grid. That could move you up a place or whatever. So anyway, just one thing to consider. But like I said, slipstream will count for much more than that if you've got the opportunity to slipstream. Right, okay, into this one. Let's watch this. Okay, we've gone for an early turn, an early lift. Now we're squeezing power.
This is the lap that I think I forgot to downshift.
Okay, so I actually agree with the gear selection. So you went through in 4th gear through this final corner. It's exactly what I do. I've tried it in 3rd, and I find I have to slow down too much for that. It's the combination of these corners and the lines that I'm interested in. So let's have a look at these.
So here I lift off. I feel like I can downshift to 5th. I didn't.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Even if you didn't downshift to 5th, obviously it might be nice to be in the gear earlier, but ultimately it won't really affect the entry speed. You can still, even if you forgot to downshift, you can still go into this corner pretty much the same speed. So I'm not too concerned about that, especially if you know you would normally downshift. I'm interested in your reasoning for going tight to the inside here early, like this, which I'm not necessarily saying I don't agree with, but why we went tight there, stayed tight, and waited all the way until about now to get back on the power. Again, I'm not saying you're doing it wrong, but this feels like quite a long time off throttle. So
I originally when I come through those two corners, I brake in the beginning of the first corner. I brake.
Yep.
And then I realized that I can lift off the throttle and then sort of coasting through those 2 corners.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to interrupt you. I agree with your reasoning. You're thinking, instead of braking, maybe I could just carry more speed for a bit longer, but with the compromise of having to just stay off the throttle a bit longer. So that's not a stupid way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Why is it that you're doing those things? I know this might sound obvious, but why do you need to brake here or lift? Why are you not just carrying more speed all the way through?
Because I went off before.
You'd end up wider here, where you'd end up like deeper, and therefore this next either you go off completely, or or you'd be compromised for this next one. Okay, so my next question is there a way of carrying more speed through here, but not compromising that next corner? Is there a different thing that you could do that isn't necessarily braking differently or lifting differently? What's the third thing you could do that would allow you to arrive here on this line, which I agree is pretty much where you want to be when you get to here? What's the third thing that you could consider doing?
So like right now, the curve right in front of us and the next one, I basically sort of quote-unquote hugged the corner and make it, I can turn this into a V instead of hugging it.
Yeah.
I can turn this into a V, or go all the way to the left over there in front of us, and then turn.
So we could basically not focus as much on staying tight all the way through, but maybe focus on this angle, arriving here at the right angle, having started a bit wider. Now, we'll see if that's the best way. It could absolutely feasibly be that hugging it is the best way. You don't necessarily know. You can pose these options and then try them and see what the outcome is. But it feels like I would, and I can't remember what I do here, but it feels like I would maybe miss this one a bit more so that I can hit this one a bit more decisively and end up here on a slightly more desirable line, having carried more speed all the way through this bit. A little bit like that that double right earlier, that really tight double right, something like that, where we're kind of, maybe we could have both. Maybe we could achieve the thing. Ultimately, the reason you're not going through here flat out is because you've got another corner coming up. It'd be lovely to go through flat out, but then the next bit's going to be screwed. But we've gone through two ways of achieving a good entry to here, but there might be a third one that gives us a bigger benefit, which is the line tweak. So we'll think about that in a minute, but let's just remember that. And then into the final two corners, once again.
The both I break for both. And this one I don't I miss the apex for this one. Both.
Yeah, so we could probably agree there's a bit of margin on the inside here. And probably a bit of margin on the turn in here. And a lot of margin on the apex there. So those three things combined, kind of approach to the left and the apex, the middle phase and this next right, there's probably quite an obvious line tweak we could make, which is just making each of those apexes a bit more decisively. And then I think your gear's right though. I'm going to ask you the same question as earlier in the lap. Was there more margin on the exit here? So even though we missed the apex, which obviously would give you an even bigger margin because we'd be that much further to the right through here, but was there still a bit of margin here we could use? Still a bit more speed, therefore we could carry through here, which then obviously impacts the next lap. Yeah, so even with a missed apex, we could still probably go quicker through there. So that's a bit more of an obvious tweak, those last corners. I think you approach here with the right intentions. We just don't maximise it on this lap. So we'll just put more of a focus on hitting the apex and getting all the way to the left for the turning point and then hitting the next apex. We'll put more of a focus on those as a non-negotiable. We're just going to do it. Like, if it means lifting more decisively or maybe lifting earlier, I think that's probably part of it. When I can hear it here, it's almost like we brake because we know we've accelerated into the corner a bit too late. You've actually kind of powered in and then gone, oh shit, I've now gone too deep. Whereas if we just not got on the power but forced the car to the apex, at the point you're braking here, you'd probably be getting on the power. And same for the next one. We're kind of like out of phase. We've accelerated when we probably should have been lifting, and that's then forced you to brake when you probably should have been accelerating. So we're kind of like one step back each time. Sorry, go on.
What did you say? Here, our goal is basically the goal is to hit the apex. Right.
Hit the apex, because if you hit that apex, that's giving you permission to get back on the power earlier. All the time you're running wide of the apex, your driving brain should be saying something like, oh, we're struggling to get to the inside, therefore we're going too fast for the corner, therefore I can't get back on the power. If you're getting to the apex and you can see what's about to happen, as in I'm about to accurately hit the apex, that's like you're now beginning the next thought process of, well, if I'm about to hit the apex, that means I'm about to have permission to get back on the power because everything's going well, we're on the right trajectory, we've got enough exit space, we've obviously got enough front grip that it's going to do what we tell it to. But because we're one step out of that, actually because you've gone in here with a bit of power and it started to force you wide, you then had to fix a problem that you've just caused yourself, and then that's meant you couldn't get on the power early, and then we then have to overcompensate by getting on the power for a bit longer here, then you can't quite get over to the left, then we turn right a bit late, and then when you do get on the power, you've got less space, and it all kind of snowballs into like one step out of place all the way through. So we'll fix the first bit, accurately making the first apex. That will give you permission to do the next bit correctly and the next bit, and you'll have all the space. So that's a bit more of like a normal just do it better section, and it will come to you. Right, now remembering everything we just did there, and I appreciate I've been talking for ages, but you're someone who doesn't tend to mind me talking for ages about concept stuff. So now let's look at how I did it and see whether the things we suggested I did, because I don't know, we're about to find out. Right, so the first one was turn one. Can we do it at full throttle if we allow ourselves a bit more margin on the exit? So I'll leave the bar up here so you can see my input. We'll look at the data in a minute. Right, so here we go. This is lap 3. So it's not like I needed more tyre temperature. And I'll be honest, I did it exactly the same on lap 1. So it doesn't make any difference. So here we go. I'm using a moderate amount of curb and a little bit of exit curb, but ultimately absolutely no problem to do it full throttle. And I tried it once, went a little bit deep, and that's because I turned in too early. The next lap I tried it, you can see I'm waiting a little bit longer to the left, which is out to here, and I'm really trying to maximise this to the point where I'm kicking up a bit of grass. I wouldn't suggest that, but you can see what I'm trying to do, just trying to open up the corner. And it's just really a relatively smooth input all the way through. The only wobble on the steering wheel is bumps. I'm not correcting anything. I'm just trying to hold it constant whilst the bumps kick the wheel a little bit. But I haven't got to react to anything. It's literally just turning in from, and if we want a reference point, it's turning in before you get to this mud patch, but ultimately when you're in the car, you can't see it very clearly anyway. It's before that. I'm not looking there at all. I'm just looking over here somewhere. And I know that all I want to do is make it onto this red and white curb, somewhere in the middle of the curb, because that's where you see the angle. I'm kind of aiming out of the corner slightly. You can see the angle of the car on the curb. I'm not joining the curb here and it's trying to go this way. I'm joining the curb from the halfway point, facing towards the exit. There. And it's just relatively easy. And I'm actually not even forced up here. You've got a bit more margin if you needed it. So that's the first thing. So we've answered the question. It's possible to do it full throttle. If you do it full throttle and something goes wrong, we can fix that separately. But it's definitely possible to do it. And actually, even on cold tyres, like straight out of the box. So that will actually almost remove a corner from your conscious thought. You won't have to think about how much do I lift, when do I need to get back on the power. It stops that really even being a corner. It's a bit like Eau Rouges to modern Formula 1 drivers. I was listening to the Formula 1 practice today and they were talking about how turn 1, La Source at Spa, all the way down to Les Combes, they count that entire thing as a straight now. And that's what I want you to think about that corner as. It's all just a straight. Provided you do a roughly good line. Right, what was the next bit we said? Okay, we were talking about, can we maximise the line, the width of the entry here, so that the line through the middle of the corner is a bit more angled, so we're not having to increase the lock as much when the track drops away. So that was the question mark here. Let's have a look at full throttle. So I didn't use all the entry. Now before we get to the next bit, and I spoil the next bit, I don't think I'm a million miles different to what you did there. Let's look at it with the throttle inputs up. So first thing was, I didn't go any wider than you. Basically the same as you. So maybe there's scope to go wider, but this obviously felt okay.
Because earlier we talked about, I think your is similar to mine, because earlier when we talked about the other option is that basically open up this corner more, right? Go straight more and turn so that we do the turn part, but not at the downhill part.
Yep, and I think what I've done, we'll compare to yours again in a sec, just so we can see exactly what you did, but although I haven't gone straight and then turned, I think I've delayed my main turn. So when we watch here, look how gently I'm getting to the inside. I'm not at the inside yet. I'm not apexing here yet. I'm going for one definite apex around here. Well, I guess it's not that much different to yours. So we're closest to the inside, roughly where this cutout is. And then we go wider. Do I attempt a second one? Oh, there's a little wobble. Yes, the second one was a bit more decisive. And I haven't gone all the way wide. Okay, so I've decided there's not enough if I go wide here, I can't get back to the left in time. Okay, fine. But overall, not a million miles different to yours. This is a very subtle difference.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at the pedal trace. Now this is what I can't see for yours until we look at the data. When you look at my pedal trace, what I'm doing is breathing on the brakes and never fully lifting off. So
what I did,
balancing, I'd say that's a balance of the car through here with the brake.
For this one, I probably lift off. We can take a look at the telemetry later.
Yeah.
For this one thing I brake. This one I didn't brake, but I may have lifted off more than you did. Basically.
Let's look at the data, because this one's tricky to see, because actually we're doing things quite similarly there, but I don't know what the speed difference is. So let's have a look at the speed. This is a very interesting session, Jing. I like this. This is like a cool. Right, which one is it?
I saw the those. Yeah.
Is it that one
This
there?
is
That one
yeah.
there, isn't it? Here we go.
Yeah.
Right, so let's delete that one. That's from a different session with a different setup. Let's make you pink. Here we go. Right, so we're looking specifically at this corner here, aren't we? So
Yes.
here. Right, so obviously you're arriving there slower because you haven't done turn 1 flat out. So we know there's some time there. So this next one, you go in a little quicker, you go a little wider, and you come off wider. Okay, right, interesting. So on the entry, we're very similar. This is the way into the corner here. We're pretty much an identical line here.
Yeah, I can see you're braking a tiny bit there, right?
So you're lifting a bit more for longer. Yeah, you can see my lip. It's exactly what it kind of feels like riding on board, but it's interesting to see it. You're lifting, your overall amount of lift is more. If you can see, like, from here to here, you're off the throttle for a longer time. Although my peak lift is a teeny bit more, it's off and then back on. It's a very much at the peak front grip I need is there, and then once that's done, we're getting back on. Yours is a bit more speculative. You're lifting for longer and going wider. And probably because you're actually going, 2 miles an hour, 2 kilometers an hour quicker. But there's not much in it. There's really not much in it. I think the biggest difference is the lack of brake. That teeny brake is getting my car angled round this part better, allowing me to just come off slightly tighter here. Having said all that, overall, if we look at the turn-in point where you're 2.0261, and then by the time we get to here, you've lost less than half a tenth. So it's really not a lot in it. The biggest difference is probably where it puts you here. How you've got a harder job to get back over. You arrive back at the left just in time for the next corner, whereas I'm already there. So that's probably the main difference. So that, I'd just say consider leaning on the brake. This is a tricky one to put into practice. Because I didn't even realise I was braking there until we looked at this. But I think on balance, although your time loss is very, very small, when we look at the time loss in the next corner, which is partly as a consequence of that, that's where it's much bigger. So we go from roughly 3/10 down, and you've been roughly 3/10 down for a few hundred metres. Suddenly we take a big step and we lose another nearly 2.5, 3/10 with the next part. So I think that's in part, if I don't zoom in part because of that positioning, which is quite obviously different there. So, okay, right, we'll look at that in a moment. Well, before we even look into here, there's something with your speed trace here, which you'll be familiar with me commenting on, which is that W shape.
Yeah.
We've got two minimum speeds for one corner, so that suggests there's a better way. Well, whenever you see that, as you've heard me say 100 times, that suggests we probably did something wrong. We probably had the compromise flipped around where we've gone in too slow, had to accelerate, and then that screwed the next bit. So we've kind of gone too slow, too fast, too slow. So ideally, we're going to turn that W into a V. The first element will be by arriving at the corner on the left, more prepared. Look how long I've got to prepare for this corner. All this time here, when I'm flat up against the white line, to take it in, to see into the next corner, for my driving brain to do calculations subconsciously, and then enter it with one minimum speed. And actually, you remember what I said about where you're hitting this curb? It's quite late, but it means when I get on the throttle, I'm committed to the throttle. I'm not having to lift again. You can see here, look, full throttle all the way, and masses of margin. Absolutely loads of space, even though I was full throttle from pretty much back here, like there. Before I even get to the curb, it's full throttle. So there's clearly a bit of a quicker way through here. And that is...
Okay, so you brake right. I'm just looking at your pedal. Yeah, I see. I see. So you open up the corner more. You mostly brake right here, right? And then... Even
our apex is similar.
Yeah.
So if we go back to the data, where we're choosing to apex here, pretty similar. It's just the difference is the angle that I'm at when I reach the apex is much more. It's much more beneficial for exiting faster. What's interesting is, even though I go through this middle part and come off quick, so the minimum speed I'm 1 kilometre an hour slower, but this part here, the apex onwards, suddenly there's a lot of extra speed, and it's all because obviously I'm getting on the power at the very point you're coming off the power. And the reason for that is that subtle angle difference, that little bit of where you've gone in shallower, your car is beginning to understeer. I'm not having that understeer because I'm angled round the corner more. And it's, I mean, if there's ever a demonstration of the difference between the two middle speeds, look at that crossover. It's the poster child for this technique difference, isn't it? That crossover. I'm able to get on the power. My only sacrifice is 1 kilometre an hour slower than you in the middle. But for that sacrifice, I've got this massive, massive gain. So there we go. We don't probably need to linger on it anymore, but that's going to be a massive benefit. So there we go. That's pretty clear. Okay, next section. Let's do the next bit. This is fun. Right, so, and not only that, I had loads and loads of space here. As I said, it was like, it wasn't even close. It's not like I did that, but holy crap, I was on the limit. I wasn't on any kind of limit there. It was easy. Right, next corner. We're both flat out through here. The big thing we spoke about was, can you get to the left in time to make this next corner easier? So let's just see in full speed.
You can totally,
You can totally get there with no problems whatsoever. So okay, and I'll play it in full speed, and then we can look at the outside view, because this is going to be quite a crucial section. Now, I wouldn't say I necessarily did that perfectly. I've got a bit of space here that I maybe would like to move into. I've chosen a compromise on this lap, which is the speed I've arrived here at. I just didn't happen to go that wide. Ideally, if I'd carried a little bit more speed in, I'd have just ended up an extra half a car width wider. Would have made this line even better. But I didn't want to force it either. I didn't want to go there artificially. So I made the most of it. I focused on the exit. You know, what my driving brain has decided here is, yes, it would have been nicer to go in here a bit quicker, but as we spoke about, the thing that really matters is nailing this next bit. So let's switch the focus to a perfect apex and getting on the power. And full throttle, bang on the apex. That was fine, and that's really, really helped. So I'm going to just go back. We can look at
that's what I was thinking. Even before the uphill, this is the part. Basically here is what I'm. So all the way to the left and then brake. Okay.
And what you'll notice is any throttle inputs between here and all the way out to here are purely balance related. So what I'm not doing is slowing down for this corner, speeding up for here, and slowing down for this corner. You'll see, if I go in slow motion, you'll see, obviously that's throttle blips, sorry, downshift, but just there, see that little tiny bit of gas I added? That's just to balance the car, to stop there being too much weight on the nose and the rear over-rotating. Because I'm obviously trailing the brakes still at this point. Still partly trailing here, you know, kind of modulating the trail. And again. That's all because I don't want to lose the rear, but I also don't want to overslow it. I want to maintain the maximum speed into here, and it's just kind of that, just dancing on the pedal a bit, just to keep the car flat while still slowing down slightly. I think the difference... Go on. Sorry, go on.
One more time. The difference, what did you say?
The difference between your technique and my technique through there was quite stark. Obviously, you had less space to get into the corner with any speed because you were tighter in the middle. And then you slowed it down quite a lot, and then you sped up towards the second corner, and that then forced you to miss that second apex. So I'm getting the benefit of more speed through here and a more accurate apex here, because I'm not trying to speed up for this one. I know the last thing I want to do is arrive at this next corner having accelerated towards it. I want to just be slowing down all the way, speed coming down and down and down. And actually, when we look at the data, what I'm hoping it's going to show is no W shape for me. I want it to be kind of a very slow V. That's what I'm hoping I'm about to see. So let's have a look. It's just here. Right, and the green and the purple, we can see your W shape, slow, fast, slow, and mine although there's a difference in how much I slow because this corner's tighter than this corner, you can see it is always decelerating. There's no accelerate up to this one. It's a V with a bit of a kink in the V, but it's always downwards. The trajectory is slowing, and then you've got kind of this little nibble on the brakes here, where this is my trailing without trying to lose the rear. It's like an ABS style trail. But there's no throttle input apart from, if I zoom right in, these little blips of balance that we were talking about. It's the only acceleration is from there all the way. Although actually, look, I have this I've obviously committed a tiny bit too much, backed off, got back on. But that was more of a fine tuning. But your minimum happens a bit later. Obviously, we know you missed the apex, so you're having to wait a bit longer. But we already knew it. We looked at it on the video. When you see the line difference, it probably makes it more obvious. You're trying to do the right thing here, but you've just made your life too difficult. So that's going to be one of the biggest changes, is that line there and the not accelerating into here, just braking all the way. What I want to see is your braking, actually.
That's what I wanted to do. Yeah, we're going to zoom out a bit. Like, where do you start to brake?
Yeah, so if we zoom into here, so you begin braking earlier, which makes sense if you've got less space to do it.
Yeah.
I'm braking more decisively and later, but coming off the brakes a little earlier. And that's because I can, because my angle is much straighter into here. That's much less of a corner for me. So, you're having to maintain the brakes much longer up to here.
I'm trying to remember from look at this, we can tell where is the uphill starts, basically, like in the braking zone. I feel like the braking is, you basically stop braking.
I'm braking down the hill before I get to the bottom, and you're braking before that. So we're both braking on the downhill portion. If I zoom out slightly. I was thinking about this when I was driving. I was thinking, do I want to take advantage of the uphill part for the braking? But I found when I left it that late, there wasn't time. So it was almost like you take advantage of that uphill bit when you can. And my peak braking here, this kind of sustained section, that is on the uphill section. But that's more that's just a nice bonus. It wasn't like I was delaying it in order to take advantage. You brake when you have to brake, basically. Otherwise, you run out of time. And then it's rushed. The main thing is going to be get all the way left and don't over slow for this one. So you have to then accelerate. If you find you've got the ability to accelerate here, you know you've slowed down too much on the approach. So it's tough. It's a really, really tough one. Look, let me show you, just to make you feel better. Let me show you me. Oh, I can't show you me screwing up because my computer crashed. So this was in the previous session. So, but you can take my word for it. I screwed that up a few times before I got it right, and I went in too fast, and I ended up braking too hard here, losing the rear. It's tough because the car's going over a hill, and there's a crest to a hill about here, so the rear gets a bit light right here. It's all pretty hard to get that right, but in general, your focus is on carrying as much speed as you can through this bit without going off, obviously. And without overslowing it to speed up to here. But by the time you get here, entire focus is on nailing this apex so you can be on throttle as early as possible for this next straight. Which I know it's all obvious, but when we've now seen that comparison, you can see that it's not just that I want you to do that. It's absolutely fundamental, because this next section, in fact, is probably, we'll look at the data in a minute, but this is where we were looking at the distance. This is now going to be like a straightforward, full throttle, basically a straight line section where you can't really do much to affect your lap time other than the distance we're about to look at. So whatever you've done here is what dictates the next bit. So let's have a look. I was telling you all about how I think maybe taking the shortest distance is a good idea. You can see me hugging that line like my life depends on it. And now, if I go in the cockpit view, I'm looking at, you can't see it because of the angle, but I'm basically looking into the distance to that bit, like just a straight line. Let's see if I do it. I'm trying to go the very, very fewest meters possible. Okay, I'm going to give myself that. I didn't necessarily blend wide. I allowed the track to move because I want to again hit this apex and take the shortest line here. And now as the track moves, I'm just going straight, pretty much, allowing the track to kink more than and then I just arrive at the left, having taken a pretty short line. I think I've kind of done what I was saying. The data might show it as well.
Definitely. Especially in the first half, it's more I open up no reason, basically.
Yeah, just here. Look how wide the pink line is here. It's full throttle regardless. It's basically no steering angle regardless. I can't see how many meters I've saved, but I've saved some meters on you. So so for sure there's something there. Right. And then this section. So what were we saying? Our hypothesis was, is there the ability to carry more speed through here by kind of ignoring the first curb a bit and focusing more on the second curb and arriving there at the right angle rather than being there already? So there we go.
I hug those two much more. I hug those two instead of going to the left.
We're about to find out if I did that or if I did it some other way. Here we go.
You're hugging a bit.
I'm hugging it a bit, but I think probably quite a lot less. So I'm hugging it that much, which is not really hugging it. I'm very much looking for that next one. I'm like, it would be nice to be tight here. The distance saved would be great, but in order to save that distance, I'd have to reduce my speed more than I want to. So I'm on very much on the carry the speed and now slow it down. So you can see my brake and my downshift is there, right here. Now I'm going, now I'm going to commit to the hug. And actually, I didn't quite make it. I could have done it slightly better, I think. Although, by there, that's the point at which I want to be tightest. Because obviously now, look at the line. I've got a perfect kind of entry into here. And what I've done is, like we were saying earlier, I've managed to have my cake and eat it. My cake was going in here fast, and eating the cake was being on the right line for this. And when we discussed it a moment ago, 15 minutes ago, your reasoning for going tight was so that you wouldn't go wide here or go off. I also haven't gone wide here or gone off, but I've managed to do that without also compromising the entry speed. And if we look at the data now, let's just see how much speed did I manage to gain.
So what you did is the first corner you basically didn't go much wider. See, the much wider for the first.
I've turned in later, for sure. So my initial turn is a bit later and it's gentler, and I've then maintained that kind of little gap to the inside. But then there's about to be a crossover point, isn't there? Here, if we go round the corner, there's our crossover, and at the crossover, I'm facing tighter in, and your car is trying to understeer wide, and it's that tiny difference. Then.
What is your thought process for you to choose that line? Right, I'm thinking through myself as well. Right, like I choose that line. I go off so many times, and then this is forced me into, hey, I'm gonna lift off earlier. And then when I lift earlier, I basically be able to hug the line. Of course, that's short distance because that's probably lower speed. How do you conclude into, hey, I can compromise my first one much more so that you can have a better for the second and third, basically?
I love when you ask these questions, Jing. So the reason that we've done today's session a little bit more like kind of discussion and question and answer and like considering different options is because pretty much that's my thought process. Although I'm obviously not taking as long to do it, and it's happening kind of almost in a split second. I've almost gone through those options that we've discussed over 5 minutes or so. I've gone through them kind of just as a bam, 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 like on the approach to the corner or maybe on the next lap. My way of deciding upon that is I want to arrive at this next corner on this line. But the no compromise part is I need to be on the right line to enter the next corner correctly. Then I've got a number of options in front of me of how to achieve that. I can either go through the corner slower and end up there tighter, which has the benefit of a shorter distance but a very, very compromised speed. Or I can go through there on a line which puts me really wide and actually not make the next corner. So that obviously doesn't really fit into my criteria because I said it was non-negotiable. I need to be on the right line for the next corner. Or there's a third option here, which is can I go in quicker and still make it there by just having a later apex effectively and maybe just compromising in a slightly different way, compromising the distance in order to have a higher speed. The way I've decided upon it is I've tried each of those things, or at least tried them to some degree, and then seeing the delta and seeing what felt best and what felt like I had the highest average speed, that's the one I've decided upon. Ultimately, if it feels good but the delta tells me I'm wrong, I'll go with the objective data. So if it felt really good, but actually when I did it your way, I was a tenth quicker, I just do it your way. And that's why I love data, because there isn't as much guesswork. But
Go for it.
No, what I was going to say, in terms of like my organic process, like in the moment of when I'm driving it, what my brain is doing to come to that conclusion, I'm just giving myself more options to consider, and then once I've tried it, or once I've tried something in that direction, if I try it a little bit wider and it makes it a little bit easier to get here, maybe on the next lap I'll go slightly wider again and see if I can carry even more speed in for any longer. And eventually I come to a point where the compromise is too much. If I go any wider, I'm on the marbles, or I'm going too far, or there's not enough time to get back to the inside, or it's just slower because, yes, okay, I can carry more speed, but everything else is too much worse. And then ultimately you come to like the best compromise. And obviously the more experienced you are, the more times you've done this over and over and over in your racing life, the easier it is to whittle it down to that conclusion quicker. But that's the thought process in a nutshell. We've just gone over it in a slower, more detailed way of looking at, okay, you're doing it this way. You've done it for a reason. You've not done it just as a guess. You've done it because when you've tried it faster, you've gone deeper. The only thing you were missing was you haven't tried this third option, which is tweak the line a bit more in order to arrive at that same outcome of not going off, turning into the next corner pretty much on the right line, but still having the good entry speed. You almost kind of admitted defeat on the entry speed a bit too soon, and you were like, I've just got to compromise it. And that's not a dumb thing. Like, sometimes that is the right answer. Sometimes there is no choice. You just have to make the compromise because there's a more important thing and there's no other option. But in this scenario, for example, and in a couple of other scenarios we saw today, there actually was a third option. You just hadn't done it yet, or if you tried it, maybe you discounted it and didn't perfect it.
Right. When you mentioned that when you at the beginning of this corner, or actually the end of this corner, you know what you want. You mentioned that there's three options.
Yes.
The three options is, you might repeat that again?
Yeah. Okay. So the first option is just take the short. These aren't in a particular order, by the way, Jing. So you don't have to consider them like this. But the first one is, obviously, we know a shorter line is fewer meters. It's potentially quicker. If you can do a shorter line at the same speed that you do a longer line, then obviously you do the shorter line. That's why on that long, fast bit, we just said take the shortest possible distance, because you can do it at exactly the same speed, whether you go tight or whether you open it up. So opening it up is pointless. That's not the case for every corner, and that's not the case for this corner either. So although I'd love to just go straight to the inside and stay tight, there's not enough grip to do that, so we're not going to do that. So then the second option is take the short distance and accept the fact that you've got to go through slower. That's what you did. So you took the shorter distance and you went through slower in order to achieve that. The third option is go through at the higher speed, but accept the fact the next corner is going to be crap. Like the entry to here, I could have gone through there faster. You could have gone through there faster and ended up here instead of here.
Which I have done before.
And you decided that was too much of a compromise through here. It made this bit way too slow. So, but you considered it and you've tried it. The fourth option, so actually there is a fourth. There's probably we could probably think of some other options. The fourth one is, can I still have a good exit whilst carrying good entry speed, but ignoring the distance to us? So the fourth one here is not focusing as much on the distance. And
which is what you did. Which is what you did.
Yeah. Although I haven't thrown distance out the window. I'm not going around the outside. I'm not going around the edge of the track. I've just I've just put less focus on it than you have. And that's allowed me to focus more on angle here at the crucial point. So I've actually got the benefit of more entry speed here. You can see on the data I'm going 8 kilometers an hour quicker.
Your throttle is keep on higher, longer than the end. When you lift up, you don't need to lift up that much.
Yeah, because I'm going straighter for longer. So my car, you're turning more here, and so you've got more steering angle on, more, at this point here, right here. In fact, if I look at this point here, interestingly, actually, my steering angle is slightly more here, but that's because it's very, very subtle with the steering angle. It's because you've done it more there. So you've turned in earlier, and then I'm turning in there. But ultimately, your corner is tighter at that point, so I'm able to go faster. So I've kind of got all the good stuff. The only thing I've sacrificed is a couple of meters of distance, and right here, 1 kilometer an hour. A little bit like earlier in the lap, I took a 1k downside in order to have an 8k upside here and here.
Way more.
So, which is way more. So it's a very, when you look at that from back here, it looks like we're doing very similar things. So what it says to me is a small tweak in line is going to have a big effect because of what it means to your angle here. At that crossover point where my car is starting to go towards the inside, your car is starting to go towards the outside, and therefore you have to slow down more, therefore it compromises the next corner, etc., etc. It's such an interesting thing to see, but what we just went over there, the reason I found my way to that, because I didn't do that on every lap. I tell you what, let's see what I did on an earlier lap, Jing. So although my computer crashed, my data should still exist. So let's see what I was trying earlier on in the session. So those were my good laps. Back here, I was obviously doing something different. Let's have a look at lap 3, when I hadn't driven this track in this car. This is going to look awful, but let's see what I tried through that corner, whether it was any different. I'll turn it orange. I have no idea what we're about to see here. So it's here. Okay, I was actually trying even wider. So what this is saying to me is here, my initial thought was try the higher speed even more and figure out the line, see if that one works. And what I actually found was, I think I carried too much speed here.
Compromising much more.
And then this one went wrong. So then I obviously... So what? Yeah, you can see just here. You see where I start to get back on the throttle here. If I zoom out a little bit, we can see where it was. Just there. I'm now like, oh, this worked. Let's try some throttle here. I'm up at 41%. That's pushed me wider, and then I've had to get off and go slower through this part. The line sucks. So the only thing I've changed is, okay, lift more so that I'm not as compromised here. It worked in as much as I was able to carry more speed, but then I was way slower there. So it's just fine-tuning. A few laps later, I've come to that slightly better conclusion. But what's interesting is I'd already decided that missing that apex was actually the right thing to do. I've just now started to walk inwards a little bit more. I didn't know that until I saw it.
That is interesting. So that gave me the information. Really, what I should have, and this is exactly why I want to have this conversation with you is, I don't want to. I want to do more practice, but I don't want to be blindly just sit there and drive. Now I see what you try to do. I do much less, by the way. But in similar, especially with this track, in the beginning I brake for a lot of those corners, and then gradually realized that it's either full throttle or I leave off a little bit. But I basically need to do I need to do much more of that. And more consciously thinking about evaluating different options for those corners, especially when they're right next to each other.
If there's here's a little shortcut, because I appreciate I've effectively said, like, you just try the different options. Like, good luck. There's one little shortcut that I'm always thinking about this, or it's always obvious to me if it happens, and that is, if there's one corner, but it feels like you're treating it as 2 corners, you're probably not doing the right... You probably haven't come to the right one of the compromises. So, whenever you have the W, for example, if you're speeding up... If you go into a corner, and then you have to then speed up again before you leave the corner, so there and there, both of these, where we've got quite an obvious W, if I do that early on in a learning phase, if I can see that it's one corner, but for me it's kind of two, I know that I'm not doing it right yet. Normally. Yeah, I'm like with that fast final bit we were just concentrating on, this bit round here.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I probably was going wide to begin with is, in my mind, that's really one corner here to here. It's one right-hander, so it should have one minimum speed. If it doesn't, something's off, something's wrong. There's not enough of a kink here for that to actually be treated as two corners in my mind. So, in my experience, the compromise is probably towards doing something other than turning it into two corners. And that, in this instance, it is treating this bit as the main apex. And even if it means not going all the way wide, all the way through here, in some instances that might have been the right thing. If, for example, there was a massive straight now, rather than a left-hander, it might be that going wider here would actually be even better. But as it stands, that isn't the case. So, and there's a tight left. So actually the speed here needs to be a little bit lower because there's a tight left. So you've done a little bit of a compromise on the distance. You've not gone all the way wide. But the fundamental is it's one corner with one minimum speed, and that minimum speed is like there, or roughly here. And so any time I would have felt this W like you've done here or here, when my first goes into this double right-hander, my first goes through there, I probably did overslow it and then speed back up, but I knew that was wrong. So I knew I'd attempt to go a little bit quicker and a little bit quicker into that first one until it was just always decelerating all the way through. And that meant I was going as quick as possible all the time. Even though the speed was coming down, I was going the fastest possible speed all the way until I couldn't, until I had to slow down more. So that is one shortcut. If it feels like you're slowing down twice for one corner, it probably isn't right yet.
Anyway. That makes sense. Yeah, that's what I did. That makes sense. All right, one more corner. One last corner.
Final corners. So the left and the right. It's one more section. Now I think we probably already know the answer to this because we spoke about it. It was make sure you're accurate for both of them. Make sure you're accurate at the apex here. Make sure you're accurate at the apex at the final corner, and commit to the final corner and really use all the space. But let's just watch. Apex, speed, all the way left. Pretty much apex and commit to the throttle. Let's just watch it with the throttle up as well, so you can see the throttle.
Oh, you barely brake.
So yeah, it's kind of, the brake is just the tweak. The reason I'm able to barely brake is because the line is right. So I'm not negotiating a tighter corner than necessary because I've gone all the way wide, all the way tight, all the way wide, all the way tight. And if you remember for this one, at this point here, you were accelerating into this corner. You can see I'm definitely braking because my focus is on hitting that apex. So if we go slow-mo, now I'm getting on the power. You know what I was saying earlier? If you know you're about to hit the apex, you know you're about to have permission to get on the power. And so I knew that. I'm about to hit the apex. I've got the permission to the power. I don't want to go too wide because I need to get left for the next one. Because the compromise in my mind is there's a longer straight coming up. So the straight between the corner we're in and that corner is quite short, here to here. The straight between that corner and the next corner is quite long. And it's full throttle through the first corner, so even more important to get a really good exit here. So that's why I've not gone all the way wide here, and I've got all the way to the left here. And, pretty much all the way to the left. I'm near enough. I'll give myself that. And then again, trying to hit that apex, it was pretty good, and commit to the throttle. And even then, I had a little bit of margin, could have gone even wider if I'd been forced to. But I wasn't forced to, and it was all nice and easy. And if we look at the line difference, we just get to that section here. That going in slightly earlier, being slightly compromised here, and I think getting on the power. Did we say you were getting on the throttle here? Interestingly, actually, I was on the throttle earlier than you, but it felt. It felt like you are on the throttle. You're from here, you're starting to get on. But because you were already running wide and your line was tighter, when riding on board with you, it felt like too much throttle. Because you were already about to miss the apex. And so by getting on the power, right now, you're already we know you're going to miss it, and you're getting on the power, and so that really makes you feel like you're going to miss it. So that's interesting. Anyway, let's just go back to there. In fact, let's just zoom in slightly tighter to here. Yeah, interestingly here, you stay on throttle. So even though you're wider here, a lot wider than me, it's going to make it very hard to get over to the left and turn. You're staying on the gas. So you're not thinking about definitely getting to the left, and that's the more important thing. You're thinking, okay, I can be full throttle, so I am full throttle. I was thinking,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you got way less time to get into here. Yeah, it makes this bit horrible. And so although you get on the power earlier than me into the final corner, even though your line is compromised, but it's because you're going slower. So you're thinking, I need to get on the power because look, I'm going 20k slower. And I'm still going to miss the apex. 20k slower and a missed apex, obviously that's going to massively affect the time. And when you look at the delta, it's one of the biggest losses over the whole lap. So we go from 1.2, it's a half a second loss just there. That doesn't take into account onto the next lap either. So half a second just from that position there. And in fact, if we look at that whole section, so from here, say, it's just over half a second through that whole section. So definitely in a heartbeat, bam, we've lost a load of lap time. But it's because I'm thinking, well, obviously I have to hit the apex. That's my job as a racing driver. This apex and the next apex have to be hit, particularly because that will then mean I can get on the power earlier and for longer, and there's a longer straight coming up. So this is more of like there's less of a considering different options thing here.
I know.
It's a tighter, more obvious corner complex, and you've driven that kind of corner, a roughly 90-degree left into a definitely 90-degree right. You've driven that on loads of tracks and loads of circuits, and you know when that feels right, and you know that, especially if you've got a longer straight here, then sacrificing distance here in order to get a really good exit into this one is definitely the right thing to do. It's more of a, you just know it because you've done it 1,000 times in other tracks, and you don't. Although it's nice to look at the delta and figure out what's best, you probably knew that before you even looked at the data. So, the less obvious the corner type is, then obviously the more you can rely on data to figure out, or your delta at least, which one of these is better. But anyway, that's probably quite clear through there.
That was very. It was extremely helpful. I'll apply this not just for this track. I feel like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about totally apply to other tracks as well. And that's what I'm looking for.
You chose an excellent car track combo here for today. That was a really interesting, lots of stuff to talk about that gave us opportunity to have different styles and figure out what's best through there. I like that.
So, that was extremely helpful. Like a lot of the track I had earlier, it's hard for me just by simply driving, not look at it look at the data to know what I need to do. This is one of the tracks that as I start driving, I can feel that every lap, even without the data, I feel different. But what you mentioned, those are all extremely helpful.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you.
I enjoyed that, Jing. I'm sorry this took so long for us to actually get this session arranged, but we got there eventually. I'm going to stop the recording.